won't die. You 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 won't die.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning, noon or night, depending on when you're listening to this presentation. I am a representative of Group 1 Farajina here to dig into one of the disease outbreak, which is rabies. Before we dive deep into it, let's first get familiar with the term. So what exactly does rabies mean? It is an acute viral disease of the central nervous system which can be transmitted by a saliva from a bite of an infected animal and typically affects flesh eaters. You can see that the rabies is referred to zoonosis, in which that means a disease that is transmitted to humans from animals. Usually when the virus enters the host, it multiplies near the entry area site. Rabies can be generally divided into two categories, furious and paralytic. The difference between the two is that paralytic usually runs less dramatic but longer course than the furious form, and it is often misdiagnosed. The furious rabies are accountable for about a good 80% of total human cases, and those who attain it show signs of hyperactivity, hydrophobia, and sometimes aerophobia. How does the disease can be spread? Now, I mentioned that rabies is a zoonotic disease which comes from the saliva of an infected animal. The types of animals that transmit the virus are, in the US, they're usually bats, coyotes, foxes, raccoons, and skunks. Meanwhile, in Africa and Southeast Asia, it's stray dogs. As for the symptoms, for the early stages of rabies are having a sore throat, low fever, headaches, and so on. But as the disease progresses, the infected person becomes sensitive to light, touch, loud noises, and often becomes extremely thirsty. In the later stages of the infection, the individual will excessively salivate, becomes dehydrated, can have loss of muscle tone, as well as partial paralysis. The incubation period of rabies, which is the time between the exposure, in this case is the bite, and the appearance of the early stage symptoms. It is usually between 2 or 3 months. Some cases have an incubation period of 6 months. It depends on the frequency of the exposure, as in how often is the individual is exposed to this virus. If we go into the statistics of the outbreak, Asia and Africa contribute 40% of the deaths each year due to rabies. About almost 99% of the cases are caused by rabid dogs. The intensity of this outbreak is that every 9 minutes, at least one death is caused by rabies, and sadly 40% of the victims are younger than 15. The United States spends $300 million for dog vaccination, and Asia spends $6.7 billion on cost prevention. Now let's go through the chronology of the rabies outbreak here in Malaysia. It starts in 2017. The disease originated from West Kalimantan, Indonesia. The first five positive cases all unfortunately died. In 2018, there were 11 cases and only one got discharged, but the rest of them unfortunately passed away. The next outbreak was in 2019, in which we had 6 people died, and the outbreak was declared to be a level 2 disaster. And the most recent case is in March 2020, where it is the first case recorded after the last outbreak, and it resulted in a death of a 5-year-old girl. The treatment of rabies is firstly, once bitten, you wash your hands for 15 minutes with soapy water. Next, immediately you report yourself to the hospital to get a dose of immune globulin. Then 4 shots of rabies vaccine will be injected in 2 weeks' time. Preferably stay in quiet and low light room to prevent spasms and convulsions. Here are ways to prevent from getting rabies. After getting a pet, a dog or a cat, make sure to vaccinate them properly. If you suspect that your pets are infected, quarantine them from themselves as well as other pets. It's best to control and monitor your pet's movements, and lastly, spread awareness of this disease to your friends and family. these are the references that we obtain information from. That is it from Group 1. Hopefully this presentation has been informative, and thank you for listening.